Sometimes I pinch myself that I'm the Premier of New South Wales, but we had to focus on primary education, public education in the first instance. A city without young people is a city without a future. Communities in New South Wales have every right to vote based on performance. In terms of heritage, the Treasurer of New South Wales and the Deputy Premier of New South Wales have both have South Asian heritage. Language, culture, knowledge and expertise of one of the biggest markets in the world. Now, my personal view is that we aren't doing enough. The potential is greater than we're currently realising. And we also want to pay tribute to the fact that it's not easy to start a business. You've got to put your heart and soul into it. Often private capital or taking out a loan, it's a huge step, and I'm full of admiration for those families that do it. Got a tolls review in place because we're the most tolled city on earth. And unfortunately, the previous government sold off those toll roads to a private company.
I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodian of the land and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Today, here in Sydney, we have got Premier Chris Minns. Mr. Minns, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be here.
It's been a year since you came into the government.
Yeah.
I met you last time when you were the leader of opposition, and now meeting Premier Chris Minns.
Yeah.
The transition from leader of opposition to Premier, how would you rate it?
Yeah, I mean, there's been challenges, but in the first instance, it's a huge honour. And I don't forget that. Sometimes I pinch myself that I'm the Premier of New South Wales, but there's good things that you can do every single day. The transition has been some days great and perfect, and other days, to be honest with you, it's been difficult. But every day we work hard for the people of New South Wales, and we never, my colleagues and myself, never take it for granted. We realise it's a massive privilege.
I think in the past 1 year, the government has initiated the construction project for the new schools.
Yeah.
And I could see that agreements have reached with the teachers' salaries as well.
Yeah.
Need to put some of the focus on childcare services as well.
Sure.
The challenges that emerged, and how do you think you are tackling it and will tackle it in the coming days as well?
Yeah, well, we had to focus on primary education, public education in the first instance, because that's our future. And if we get that right and invest in education, then it has massive benefits for the society and our economy even in the years ahead. So New South Wales teachers went from one of the lowest paid to the highest paid in the country. But living expenses are the most expensive here in New South Wales. So we felt we had to do that to retain teachers and recruit new ones. For childcare, we are in the process of building 100 new childcare centres across New South Wales. We want to locate them with public schools so that when mum or dad drops off the kids in primary school, there's an opportunity for the kids to go in there too.
Especially in Sydney with the prices that have gone up.
Yeah.
And we talk about the Aussie dream to own a home.
Yes.
That is increasingly hard day by day if I look into it. So how do you plan to address the housing affordability here in New South Wales and especially in Sydney?
You're absolutely right. You are 100% right. And there was a report out 2 weeks ago that said we were losing twice as many young people as we were gaining into the city. So those young people, particularly the ones that are between the ages of 25 and 40, they start businesses, they join communities, they have families, they pay taxes, and they're moving to other states and other countries. And we want them to have their life and their future right here in New South Wales. So we have to build houses. And if we don't do that, a city without young people is a city without a future. And I want to make sure that the next generation have access to housing and rents so they can get great jobs and write the next chapter in Sydney's future.
We talk about the brain drain. So this is the one good example of brain drain. We've been losing so much of intelligent people, so much of capable people, especially the young ones, leaving New South Wales just for the reason that affordability of housing in the other states is much better than Sydney.
Yes, that's exactly right. And look, it has massive implications for young people, but think about it from the perspective of a nurse at a public hospital. We can increase their pay, and we have. We can make conditions better at work, and we have. But if Sydney houses are $500,000 more than Melbourne houses, guess where they're going to go? They're going to leave. So we have to do this for the city's future.
Taking your point that you are taking it seriously, I will tell my kids as well, keep working hard, don't worry, Sydney will be affordable in the coming days. So can I mark these words?
If we get it right and we get these reforms through, it'll make it a lot easier for the next generation, and the reverse is true.
Multicultural society, especially here in New South Wales.
Yeah.
How do you think the multicultural society, especially for the South Asian background people, have played a role in you becoming the Premier of the state?
A massive role. I'm going to be honest, a huge role. I think we were able to present a plan and a program to the South Asian communities of Western Sydney in particular and say, this is what we want to do in health and education. This is how we want to grow and invest in the economy. And we're very grateful that we were able to win some of their support. I'd like to build on that in the future. And I also know that there's no guarantees. The communities in New South Wales have every right to vote based on performance. And so we stay humble, but we really want to fight hard for their support, continued support for our government. Well, I mean, we have to be doing everything we can to reduce the cost of living for families. So we've pursued energy rebates over the last 12 months. We have a toll cap in New South Wales for families that have to use our toll roads. We're ensuring that when it comes to utility bills, that we've ended the practice of selling off government assets via privatisation so that these corporations aren't handed over to monopoly private companies, because guess what they did with the price? They jacked them all up. And we're going to continue that. That's so important. And I recognise that families are doing it really tough right now. We've got the dual hit of inflation and interest rates both being at record levels, and the government has to do everything we can to help families in particular.
How have you engaged with these, especially the South Asian community in the past days?
Yeah, I mean, we have formal channels through Faith New South Wales as well as Multicultural New South Wales, which have formalised structures and boards, and they're really important. But to be honest with you, I really rely on friends and colleagues who from a South Asian background to really understand what's happening in the community. And you'd be aware that in terms of heritage, the Treasurer of New South Wales and the Deputy Premier of New South Wales have both have South Asian heritage. That's really important, and that's unique for our government. No government in any part of the country is like that, and no previous Labor government ever had that senior representation. Now, the reason that's good is because those, Daniel and Prue, bring their personal heritage and their experiences to the cabinet table. And I think that's invaluable. I do.
Talking about the people of the Indian heritage, have you been breaking the naan breads with the Indian leaders recently?
Yes, we have actually. We've been able to meet so many people, whether it's celebrating Diwali a couple of weeks ago to having community leaders through to going to major community festivals. And it's a real joy to be invited along as the Premier to some of these big events.
So butter chicken or chicken vindaloo?
Probably chicken vindaloo, to be honest with you, yeah.
Moving away, that Maharashtra, Gujarat, and New South Wales, they was given the status of sister states.
Yes.
How will you advance it further? What are the plans that you have in mind?
Well, direct government to government communication is really important so that we can explore opportunities of future trade and commonality. But the best way to do it, I think, is person-to-person links. And New South Wales has a massive community that have South Asian heritage, and as a result, have language, culture, knowledge, and expertise of one of the biggest markets in the world. Now, my personal view is that we aren't doing enough. The potential is greater than we're currently realising, and that's going to be a big focus for my government in the next few years, because there's huge economic possibilities for the state, and I love seeing particularly young South Asian entrepreneurs start businesses, employ people, and watch their business grow.
Any plans to visit India in the near future?
I'd love to go there. We haven't announced a date or a time yet, but it would be a real privilege to get there.
Small businesses are the ones who have been hit the hardest.
Yeah.
Any particular plan that you have in mind, or the government bodies are trying to do to give a support back to the entrepreneurs or the small businesses?
Yeah, look, a few things. Firstly, we've pursued over the last 12 months a cut for small businesses in their electricity bills, because we recognise there was a spike over the last year. Secondly, we're working really hard to allow small businesses greater access to government procurement, because governments are one of the biggest buyers in the economy, and the New South Wales government made it really hard for locally based businesses to sell to the New South Wales government. So we're removing a lot of the thresholds there to allow our departments to directly deal with local firms so that they can benefit the local community. Because if we have to spend the money anyway, we'd rather help a local business get a good contract with the New South Wales government. And thirdly, and this is important, the government's pursuing the emergency services levy as a reform, an insurance reform. And one of the biggest impost costs for businesses is the rising cost of insurance. So we want to put downward pressure on those costs by changing the way that levy is collected. We still need to make sure we've got enough money for our firefighters and our emergency services, but if we can take some of the burden off businesses, that's a good thing.
Even me being a small business, when I talk to some of the owners in the business, what they normally say is they're bleeding to a level that they will die by themselves.
Yeah.
I think the pain is enormous. So definitely some of the steps have to be taken just to patch the hole so that they at least start breathing once again.
Yeah, we'll patch that hole. We want to work hand in hand with them. And we also want to pay tribute to the fact that it's not easy to start a business. You've got to put your heart and soul into it. Often private capital or taking out a loan, it's a huge step. And I'm full of admiration for those families that do it.
Well, I always praise the small businesses for the reason it is not only that they're trying to make living for themselves, they're creating and maintaining the employment of Australian citizens as well.
Yeah.
So that is an addition on top that the
100%.
burden that they have.
Yep, you're right about that. They're the biggest employers in the country. So we've got to recognise that.
Moving on to transport and road infrastructure. It has been a challenge, and especially here in Sydney, which has got the world's highest tolls.
Yeah.
The train gauges, they do not match with the metros. The buses and the trains are manufactured overseas rather than being manufactured here in Sydney. What exactly do you have in mind, or the government have the plans to bring back, one, the manufacturing to Australia, which is sustainable as well? So that would reduce not only the tolls and the other stuff, it would also improve the transport services as well.
Absolutely. So if we can build up our public transport links, it allows people to get to their job and see their family using public transport. We're trying to put houses alongside public transport, so that's easier to do. Secondly, we've got a tolls review in place because we're the most tolled city on earth. And unfortunately, the previous government sold off those toll roads to a private company. So it's a difficult thing for us to navigate, because obviously once it's been sold off, it's hard to get back into government hands. We're determined to do everything we can for households and motorists, because we don't support that philosophy, which is basically government goods being sold off to private interests and then the private interests jacking up the fees, fines, charges or tolls. It's not fair on families.
Plans to bring back the manufacturing units to Australia, and especially in New South Wales?
Yes, so the Tangara Mark II, the Tangara 2.0, we want to build them right here in New South Wales. And I think that the process of building so much of that transport infrastructure overseas, it was originally used or justified as a way of saving money. But in the end, the prices skyrocketed in any event.
For the last few years, what we have seen is due to climate change, there has been very, very heavy downpour. If we just go back a few weeks ago as well, does the drainage have enough capacity at the moment? If not, what is being done to capture that water?
It does. I mean, when you've got a city that's growing, you have to constantly invest in your water infrastructure. So that's a challenge because the money's got to come from somewhere. And we've got to get the balancing act right, where we're collecting enough to build the trunk potable water and sewage services, but not so much that it puts extra burdens on households or families. I think we got the mix about right, but yeah, it's always going to be a challenge when you've got a growing city.
Before I wrap up, GPs, so there has been very, very acute shortage of general practitioners here in New South Wales and especially Sydney. When I talk about, apart from the nurses is the second most demandable job here in Sydney because we don't have enough numbers to do that services as well. What's being done to meet these services? Are we trying to train those doctors and nurses more here in New South Wales, or any plans to bring from overseas?
Yeah, I mean, obviously primary healthcare and immigration are a Commonwealth responsibility, but, you know, they've got to do their bit because you're right. Every time a person in the community can't find a GP, can't find a practice that's prepared to take them on, guess what? If they're sick, they go to an emergency department, which puts more pressure on the public hospital system. And I'm not going to blame a patient for doing that or putting their family first. They need to do that. But as a result, we need to rebuild our GP frontline primary health system. And part of that will be ensuring that where we have overseas doctors, they're quickly turned over and put into the community so that they can do their job. And we allow more opportunities for people to train to become doctors here in New South Wales.
Thank you so much for your time. But before I wrap up, what would be your final message to the youngsters who are trying to leave Sydney?
So my message is that we are working very hard to ensure that Sydney is a livable city with available housing and great opportunities. It's one of the most exciting cities on earth. If we can solve this housing problem, then there's great opportunities for you to start businesses, join communities, raise families right here in the most beautiful city on earth.
Thank you so much. My name is Navneet Anand, signing out for Fiji Times. Be with the Times and voice aajKal, local and global. Thank you to my whole team of Vishal Kumar, Arvind Singh, and Tarun Yadav. Mr. Minns, once again, thank you so much.
Good man, thank you.
Fiji Times. Be with the Times.